They are going to splash the pot.
They are really going to have a lot of cash, and they're going to want to come in and compete. So
Yeah, but you only get so many DP spots. Jermaine Jones is getting a DP spot, and
Yeah.
they're gonna use all theirs on international players like Lampard and other guys.
I don't know. You never know. I mean, you've got to think that for a team that or for a group that spends so much energy. You look at what they've done in Manchester with really embedding themselves into the culture there, getting themselves involved with building giant training centers and trying to, participate as much as possible in the national team and playing up their links to the local community there, that pulling in a player from the U.S. national team would probably be a pretty good marketing move, especially a player from the national team who was, I think, Tim Howard's, absolutely epic game against Belgium aside, probably the most consistent best player for the U.S. national team.
Yeah.
Another guy whose stock is never going to be higher, right? I mean,
yeah.
Right.
So you think about how to ingratiate yourself to a bunch of people who might be a little suspicious of the ownership group. Bringing in one of the stars from the national team isn't a bad way to do that. So.
Another team whose fans are a little bit suspicious of their ownership group and has also been linked to Jermaine Jones in the past, and I think should get Jermaine Jones, is DC United.
Oh.
No bias or anything.
Of course not.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. What MLS fan bases are not just a little suspicious of their ownership group? I mean, there's probably 3 or 4, but most of them are kind of yeah, wait, what are these assholes doing again?
Doesn't SKC love their ownership group?
And they also want Jermaine Jones.
Yeah, why wouldn't they? I believe Seattle folks probably unreservedly love their ownership group.
I would agree with that.
I gotta say Toronto's starting this year.
Yep. Toronto probably fans of their ownership group. In Portland, it's very, very, very mixed feelings. Not even personnel decisions, everybody fucks up, but really just the incessant just ass clownery of Merritt Paulson. You're constantly just facing him. I get people asking me about that, he said it's great. He's really vocal. I'm like, no, it's not. It would be great if he was vocal and not just saying stupid shit all the time. But yeah, I think maybe NYCFC. I don't know. You never. I mean, yeah.
Well, D-Roy Jenkins thinks they can do no wrong.
Yeah, well, D-Roy Jenkins is an idiot. So. It's good. It's funny. D-Roy Jenkins showed up, and then Chance Encounter kind of stopped being such an asshole and went back to saying rational things. And to his defense, he actually knows a reasonable amount about the game and can be funny. And I was just wow, it's it's like he handed out the captain's armband. He's like, okay, here, it's your turn now. People who don't hang out on RMLS are like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Well, they don't. How do they just even discover our podcast if they don't hang out on RMLS?
People who don't hang out enough to know.
Speaking of RMLS, a bunch of new users this week. That's who's here now. That's who doesn't know what's going on.
Cool.
We went from 20,000 to 25,000 in a month.
Yeah, I'm totally looking forward to debating promotion and relegation and winter schedule and
every week over and over.
Salary cap just over and over and over. It's going to be so good, guys.
Guys, this is just a chance to pretend we're more important than we are. So if you're a new listener, we are very important people.
Yeah, we get a lot of clout.
I'm gonna counterpoint Josh and say that we welcome you. Thank you for listening.
We've even talked to people like Matt Doyle and the main mod, who claims he's not the main mod, but he is, right?
Yeah. Probably. He's the most active of the mods. The most active and the least nonsensical.
Does anyone else feel like we got the brush off about getting called the official podcast instead of the unofficial podcast?
Then
the World Cup happened.
Yeah, so that's
convenient.
Yeah.
Very convenient that the World Cup happened.
Hey, speaking of friend of the show, Matt Doyle, I believe we might have to After the World Cup, we gotta get that scheduled and get a follow-up going.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because he certainly has not talked enough about what he thought happened with the U.S. team. So we let him talk just a little bit more.
I think he's written like 7 articles a day since.
I think, okay, here's my biggest question for him. Is because he's like talked so much shit about how he played in Brazil. So my question is, what's the difference between what we did in this World Cup versus what Chelsea did to win Champions League in 2012?
They won Champions League in 2012. I think we did.
Good, yeah.
The winning part.
Yeah.
But
You mean play style?
Yeah. Because the gulf in talent between Chelsea and the teams that they played to win Champions League is a lot smaller than the gulf in talent between our national team and the teams we played in Germany and Belgium.
Well, but here's the thing: is you know, like, I actually think that anyone complaining about the team, that game against Germany, it was close to 100 degrees on the field. Everyone was exhausted. Everybody who went into Manaus had a really rough rest of the group stage. So there's no way you can criticize the U.S. team for how they played in that game. And against Belgium, like, I think there are some, like, Belgium talent level, unquestionably, much more talented team than the U.S. But Belgium did not play particularly well for a lot of that game. And, you know, I think that the U.S. could have been a little bit more adventurous. And, you know, even then still, like, yeah, they didn't play a great game, and we still were like one Wondolowski fluff away from getting out of that game. That said, though, yeah, I mean, the U.S. team is not super exciting to watch. They're not particularly adventurous. Nobody holds the ball very well. Michael Bradley, you know.
Well, Josie holds the ball pretty well.
Not without.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say, like, at what point did his hamstring allow him to, you know, that was like, there was like 20 minutes of that.
Yeah, no, it would have been great, but it never happened. And we didn't bring Eddie Johnson.
Well, but honestly, Josie Altidore holds up the ball really well, but by, like, you know, manhandling somebody behind him while he stands there waiting for somebody to pass to. But I don't think that we had the runners coming into space to really enable that to happen.
That's what Yedlin was for. When Yedlin came on, that's exactly what we did.
But he came on for injury. It wasn't planned that way.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't like a tactical approach. But the thing is, like, Klinsmann
I'm sure he
has
would
never
have come on, though, because he came on in both the Germany and Belgium, or Portugal games.
Yeah, but he came on again in, like, the 60th or 70th minute. Anyway, so what I'm saying is I think that you can kind of critique the play style, but you shouldn't blame everything on the play style. Like, the U.S. had a remarkably good tournament and was very, very close to going through the round of 16. I mean, going into the quarterfinals, and you know, and even after in overtime, after they got Julian Green goal, they were still really, really pressing, and Belgium definitely sweated out that one. And talent-wise, they're a way better team. The thing is, though, like, the style that you play when you look at Costa Rica, like, the U.S. national team is more talented than the Costa Rica team. The Costa Rica team did much, much better because they're a better drilled team.
Not against the Dutch, though. They played more negatively against the Dutch than we did against Belgium.
Oh, they're an incredibly negative team. I'm saying they got further because they're so well drilled defensively.
And they got to Greece in the round of 16.
Well, yeah, I mean,
if we'd played Greece in the round of 16,
but they beat Italy and Uruguay and tied England.
That's true.
So you know. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, I think
we do that too, though. I think that we beat England in this group this year.
Yeah.
You know, if we're in their place.
I think there's space to criticize the style that the U.S. team played because you've got to be a little more adventurous and, you know, you've got to push a little bit more if you want to, you know, turn those really, really close games your way. But at the same time, like, they had a remarkable World Cup. I don't know. I feel like criticizing them.
I think one thing that hurt them was that when they did press, they looked so good that, you know, the fans were saying, why weren't we pressing more often?
Yeah.
Because when we had our backs against the wall, we looked amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Except for our finishing. You guys must have seen the same Yedlin highlight reel that I did, and boy, we flubbed a lot of chances.
Yeah.
But just to be able to create that many chances, like, that's a great sign. I'm not saying that we missed those chances, But I'm saying that if you look at the first 70 minutes of that game, we weren't really going after those chances. And then once we were forced to go after them, we were finding the chances without any hesitation. And I'm not saying you can run at that pace for 90 minutes. I'm just saying, is there a way you can, turn it on and off as you go along to where you're not always on the back heel?
And not to beat a dead horse, but Ian, you claimed that because Klinsmann chose Wando over EJ, you therefore lost the debate because he was the final word. Does Wando flubbing his chance mean
not at all.
that...
not at all. EJ's not even there. If Eddie Johnson's in that game instead of Wando, EJ is not in the place where Wando is to have a chance to put that away.
What about the tournament, though? Not just...
I think
with Josie going down.
Yeah, EJ should have been there.
Yeah.
Because EJ, I
believe if EJ's there that we play EJ and Dempsey up top instead of playing Dempsey solo.
Yeah, and it works better. And Bradley can do what he was meant to do in the World Cup instead of playing this weird I'm gonna do everything role.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me also play devil's advocate here and say, I think the Ghana game, we can all agree, was just not a great match. Even though we, on the right side of it, we didn't look great. But if you look at, we took it to Portugal, and I think that if you're looking at that match, I think the other two matches, it's a whole different story because you're playing Germany, who, as we saw today, can put up 7 goals on Brazil, and then you're playing Belgium, who beat us 4-2 the last time we met, and it looked worse than that.
Yeah,
for
it
us.
was more like 6-0.
I think if you look at the competition, you can't, you have to shell up a little bit against those two teams and hope for the best. I think you have to play a little bit of Bradley ball in that situation.
Yeah, and after watching what Germany did today, I'm totally okay with how we played Germany in that last group stage
After
game.
Manaus? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's, I guess, the frustrating thing for some people, and for me a little bit too, is that when we really turned it on against Belgium and against Portugal, it's because we were down. And then when that happened, we actually played really fantastic. It played pretty even.
It was very
Outplayed Portugal even. We definitely outplayed Portugal. I think
I think Portugal was the one game that we were turned on the whole time.
Right, because we were down really early. We got down in the 5th minute.
Yeah, I guess that's. But I feel like even when we were up, we didn't really pull back.
Right, because we'd been pressing the whole game. It's so much easier to keep attacking when you've been attacking for so long than it is to just turn that switch, which is why I feel like it took a few minutes after Belgium scored. But yeah.
So, speaking of Dempsey.
Yeah?
Yeah, Dempsey's going to be on Letterman.
Hmm.
How do you guys feel about that?
Does anybody still watch that show?
Old people who don't watch soccer.
Oh, okay, there we go. Because I was like, I guess that would be a big deal if I even knew when it was on or what channel it was on. But I remember watching David Letterman when I was a kid. But when I was a kid, it was the '80s. It's been a while. But yeah, he's kind of a dick, right, Letterman? He's probably going to make jokes about soccer. This should be interesting.
That's always as somebody like yourself who kind of doesn't remember Letterman except for the 80s and at the time was too young to care, my impression of him has always been of a dick. I'm used to, Conan being the funny guy that he is, or Jimmy Fallon or whatever, and Dave just kind of seems bitter and shitty.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if it was Dempsey on The Daily Show, I would be excited.
Amazing.
I would be
so much played soccer,
so much more excited for that. It's on Letterman. I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's a thing.
The old people will continue to hate soccer.
It's more of a cultural marker than something that's actually going to be exciting to watch.
If there are any old people listening right now, don't bother. Get out of here. All right, let's start wrapping it up. How about everybody talks about one thing that we haven't covered yet for a minute or so. It's not a lightning round. Don't get me wrong here.
It's not
it's like any of the MLS games that happened.
Yeah, like you can talk about one of the games. You can talk about just life in general. Let's kick it off with Ian. Put him on the spot because his name's first on my screen here.
So, it's too bad Dennis isn't here.
Not lightning round.
It's too bad Dennis isn't here, because his team totally screwed up against my team. My team beat his team in Toronto, and it was awesome. Nanner. But the more important thing is that nobody in the East won this week except for DC. Huh. And now we are top of the East. We're borrowing it from Kansas City.
Is that how you get to the top of the East? Is everybody else in your conference loses? I've been wondering what it would be like to have a team that plays in a slightly weaker conference.
Slightly, that's generous.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have, our conference doesn't have some of its biggest stars, like Tim Cahill and the SIC guys.
A lot of people to the World Cup, just a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's back, but I can pretend that he's not.
Yeah, Roy Miller, big names.
So we're gonna rename this. This is no longer not lightning round. This is now the gloat corner.
I have literally